I have been inspired to come up with this topic because in the last few weeks we had visited all kind of different churches and religious establishments to learn something. So this is the topic. Are church and state really separate in this country? Don't be cynical yet. I've been wondering about this topic for a long time. I thought I would just openly explore with you. I grew up on the island of Taiwan, where many religions were practiced. I never felt pressure to conform to one or another, and the government, for the most part, stayed out of the way of religion. However, as children, we were taught to follow Confucius' teaching, which dictated our lives and permeated into the government. We were taught to respect hierarchy and follow the rules that adults with authority had laid down. When we break the rules, there will be punishment. The fear of punishment has guided our whole life. We did not need to follow any other religious authority. Around the world, many people dream about coming to the U.S., not just for an opportunity to build a better material life, but also to enjoy freedom to be who they are. This was made possible because this country was founded on its Constitution. It's every citizen's privilege and responsibility to uphold. As an immigrant, I fully appreciate the freedom of self-expression guaranteed by the First Amendment. This includes religious freedom as a result of creating a separation between church and state. To further educate myself, I needed to know more about this concept of separation of church and state and where it comes from. Forgive me for repeating something you probably all already know. Roger Williams, colonist, was ordained an Anglican minister in 1629, but became disillusioned with the Church of England's hierarchy, wealth, and political power. In the winter of 1636, Roger Williams was banished by the Puritans in the colony from his home in Salem for preaching new and dangerous ideas, such as religious freedom and spiritual equality. This was considered a rebellion against the theocracy system at the time. With his imminent arrest, he fled to the place called Moshaka, later renamed it Providence. Williams and his followers chose to create a government with limited power to protect him and his followers' freedom to practice their faith their way. This was a radical new idea for the separation of church and state. This law as a government will only address civil matters. It will have power to decide on issues such as taxes, public work project, property taxes, and perhaps military affairs, but will have no authority at all over religious and spiritual matters. And because they needed a fair way to make decisions without drawing on one religious belief that not everyone believed in, they chose to use a system called democracy. His coining the phrase of the separation of church and state must have helped Jefferson and Madison when they created our First Amendment of the Constitution, which was ratified in 1791. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of a press and the right of people peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Boy, how far we have come, huh? For someone like me, coming from an authoritarian society, reading this amendment often brings me tears. Building on our American motto, a pluribus unum, we as a nation are gathered as one of many, as a democracy, which means we're a nation of diversity. The First Amendment is designed to protect citizens' rights to choose their religious practice, including not practicing at all. This religious diversity or pluralism is also supposed to provide safety for those who are different and make sure the government stay out of the way of citizens' freedom to exercise their liberty. However, just because we have a variety of religious and spiritual practices, that does not mean all people feel they have equal rights and protections. For years, this country's majority religion has been Christian. While it has made a lot of contributions to building this country, it also created a power dynamic where Christians are the dominant group, and everyone else is part of the subordinated group. Since society and its norm are usually built by dominant group, the dominant people usually do not know they're dominant, just like the fish in the water. But for someone who is not a Christian, non-theistic, not religious, this dominance is very obvious. As a newcomer, I can easily detect the religious influence, especially that of Christianity. This pressure didn't come from the government policy, but come from the culture itself. To truly practice religious pluralism is to follow our shared original teachings, including love, compassion, honesty, respect, justice, forgiveness, tolerance, kindness, empathy, and harmony. Like dealing with any differences, it's natural for us to compare and judge. But when the dominant group does the judging, there is a significant consequence because it can pressure the subordinated group to conform or else to be condemned. When one religion is dominant, it can easily betray these shared teaching and become oppressive towards the different others. In the movie Conclave, the character of Cardinal Lawrence, played by Ralph Fiennes, presents the notion that clinging to an absolute certainty is dangerous and even sinful path. He said, "Certainty is a great enemy of unity. Certainty means there's only one truth." Buddhism teaches the beauty of embracing the unknown, the uncertainty. Zen practice often reminds us to come back to ground zero, which means come back to the beginner's mind. When we hang on to one truth, we tend to defend it while minimizing everything else. This is the danger. Working as a hospital chaplain, I often hear patients talk about feeling punished by God when facing their health issue or reflecting on their lives. This concept of the wrath of God has become cause of religious, if not cultural, wounding. This is authoritarianism on overdrive. On the surface, it certainly looks like we honor all traditions, we celebrate all religious holidays, but only Christian holidays are official holidays that employees can get a day off. They can celebrate all other holidays, but must take their vacation day or sick day. My friend Mike and I used to be very active in Rotary Club for years. Although Rotary International is a secular organization, we noticed that the clubs in the U.S. consistently started their meeting with an invocation. When we challenged that practice, they said the practice was not denomination specific, but we said the word still hinted this was a Christian practice. They are forcing the non-Christians to go along with it. When Mike refused to do that, the club president offered to bring him a sample or invocation that he could just read. For years, I did not put up any Christmas decorations. My neighbor wondered if I needed some help. When I said no several times, he finally said she would do it for me. Several times when getting invited to dinner, the host would say, "Let us pray." Everyone bowed their head and followed. No one asked me if I was a Christian or not. Their assumption was another form of dominant behavior. Most of the time, these are well-meaning people who think they're being helpful by making us more like them. To us non-Christians, this is the pressure for us to assimilate. When I tell people that I'm a chaplain, they immediately assume that I'm a Christian. Although the modern chaplain's role is to support all faiths, we are trained to care for everyone. Most often, the patient didn't care what my faith was. They were just so happy I came and visited. But my fellow chaplains had questioned my sincerity just because, although I am not a Catholic, I often incorporate Trinity in my prayer for my Catholic patient. And other chaplains challenged my authenticity just because I offer blessings differently. They asked me to explain my concept of God or lack of it. Often this curiosity crossed the line into judgment. And so, this typical how dominant group exercise its power to create what's a normal standard to judge from or exclude the different others. If we don't follow, we're seen as deviant or inferior. These daily little cuts all add up to a repressive environment for those who are not Christians. When Roger Williams created this concept of separation of church and state, did he intend for this wall to prevent encroachment from both sides? I wonder about it when I notice that we have "In God We Trust" in our paper and coin money. And the Orange County supervisor started public hearing with the invocation. This certainly looks like religions have breached the wall. And I wonder if religious freedom Roger Williams and his followers fought for was only for the Christian faith. What about all the other traditions? Do they deserve equal opportunities too? Like many people, I have no problem with anyone who wants to practice their religion. But when someone behaves as if their religion is more legitimate or more important, then this can become a threat to the foundation of a democratic society. We may think we're following our motto of religious pluralism, but it looks like we're letting one religion permeate and dominate our lives. In a social activist Paul Keevill's blog, he wrote, quote, I define Christian hegemony, I had to look up that word, as an everyday, pervasive, systematic set of Christian values and beliefs that dominate all aspects of our social systems, including our relationship with one another, the natural environment, our economic, political, educational, healthcare, criminal justice system, and housing. Nothing is unaffected by Christian hegemony, whether we're Christian or not. Christian hegemony operates on several levels beyond internalization of dominant Christian belief and value in the individuals. Along with the power of some Christian denominations and churches, there's a vast network of parachurch organizations, generally tax-supported, nonprofits, such as hospitals, broadcasting network, publishing houses, lobbying groups, and thousands of others who wield influence in particular sphere of U.S. society and throughout the world. Another level of Christian dominance is within the power elite. There's a network of 7,000 to 10,000 predominantly white Christian men who control the largest and most powerful social, political, economic, and cultural institutions in the country. After centuries, the dominance of Christian legacy has become so invisible, unquote. Obviously, this dominance is much more than just pressure me to put on some Christian decoration. As demographic changes continue, we as a nation have found it challenging to live with our differences in harmony. For decades, we've been fighting for racial and gender equality. Now we need to fight for religious equality as well. According to Pew Research, in 1990, 90% of American adults claimed they're Christians. 30 years later, in 2022, the number went down to 63%. So although Christians are still dominant in the population right now, the demographic changes will continue to cause a further decline. When Christians are no longer the majority religion, just like the whites are no longer the majority race, soon the change will have a profound impact on our society. Any dominant group will feel threatened when they are afraid of losing their power and dominance. They can be about race, gender, or religion. Dominant groups often are not willing to give up their privilege and controlling and benefiting from the agenda they set. So when they are pressured to make their tent bigger, to include and abide by the equal rights law for LGBTQ plus same-sex marriage and women's rights to make their own reproductive decision, they frame it as a threat to their religious freedom, climb over the wall, and demand to change the government law for their protection. In reality, it is not their freedom to practice that is at risk. It is their dominance. When the fear of losing power and control as a dominant group feels existential, the dominant group will fight back. This is when the wall between the church and state started to crumble. It is not the government that trespassed onto the church side, but it's the church that intrudes the government side and impedes the government's ability to maintain a democratic system. The truth is that our beliefs and values make up our worldview. We cannot help but bring our worldview into everyday life. Every decision we make is subjective. And to have a truly separate church and state is to practice advanced citizenship. We as free people need to support a government that protects everyone's liberty. I remember President Biden said that although he's a practicing Catholic and pro-life, as a president representing the United States government, he must uphold the law to provide equal rights for pro-choice people. I have lost sleep for a long, long time that our democracy is under siege, and we cannot hold up the wall of separation. In the interview, Amanda Tyler, a religious freedom advocate and a member of Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Freedom, discussed the latest court cases and the trends in religious freedom. She said, quote, "I believe the single biggest threat to religious freedom and our democracy in the United States today is Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is antithetical to the constitutional ideal that belonging in United States society is not predicated on faith, what faith one practices, or whether someone is practicing at all. The political ideology that seeks to merge American and Christian identities is deeply embedded in American society and manifests itself in several different ways. Some are more harmful than others. The most violent expression is what we saw in January 6th insurrection, get most of the attention, end quote. But the more subtle invasion includes state legislative effort to promote teaching of the Bible in public school, to require posting "In God We Trust" in other public places, or bringing back prayers and 10 Commandments, to ban public libraries' ability to provide all kinds of books for children, and also to get funding for children, for federal funding for children's and for Christian schools. All of this is dangerous because they perpetuate a false narrative that to be a true American, one must be Christian, and often certain kind of Christian. These threats to religious freedom ultimately are threats to the foundation of our democracy. I suspect even taking away funding for the poor and marginalized was based on certain kind of Christian, I believe, that everyone should and can pull up their bootstraps and thrive. If they become hungry and homeless because they're too lazy. Tyler also said, at its core, Christian nationalism threatened the principle of separation of church and state undermine the establishment cause of the First Amendment. It also leads to discrimination, at times violence against religious minority or non-religious at all, or anyone who disagreeing with them. These issues will only draw more attention in the years ahead since the 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court. Eager to hear more religious liberty cases advancing Christian nationalist argument than in previous years. Now I've totally depressed you. I want to remind you that we, you take pride in our free thinking, freedom to choose, and commitment to social justice and democracy. Instead of fretting and worry, we need to stay awake and spend every ounce of our energy to fight for freedom and justice. Our Constitution is designed to provide for all. In the book, 20 Lessons to Fight Tyranny, historian and Andrew Carnegie Fellow Timothy Snyder suggests the ways to defend democracy with individual actions. The first and the most important one is do not obey in advance. He wrote, most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts to this way is teaching the power what it can do, end quote. When this current administration sets out to destroy all the DEI work in the government, many corporations volunteered self-censorship by eliminating their own DEI policy and practice. Now, before the pressure even got to them, we cannot let our fear stop us from being free people. The second lesson is to defend institutions. It is institutions that help us to preserve our democracy. They need our help as well. Do not speak about our institution unless you make them yours by acting on their behalf. Institutions do not protect themselves, so choose an institution that you care about and take a stand and fight for it. Michelle Obama said, run for something. I said, do something. Use the power of your voice, your money, or your physical and mental strength. First Amendment rights are worth putting ourselves on the line for. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get off our couch and go do it. Amen. Let's be.